is next to or according to the sacrifices. What we have here is really two different concepts. It's a dispute that's much bigger than is this the avot, or is it the sacrifices, which is the true source of the Amidah? On a certain level, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the rabbis have this prayer and they're promulgating it to the Jewish people. What's really at play here is that debate, that tension that we've been grappling with for the whole several weeks of this course. And that is this tension between spontaneous prayer from the heart and, on the other hand, fixed liturgy. That's part of a fixed tradition. So the fixed tradition is the keva, and the prayer of the heart, spontaneous prayer, is kavanah. I'll just write in the Hebrew. Okay, so keva and kavanah. These are the two phenomena that are at loggerheads with each other in tefillah, and the rabbis struggle with these principles. And we saw the earlier statement that said that one who makes his tefillah, his prayer, keva, one who makes it so that you're just muttering words without any kavanah, ein tfilato tachanunim. His prayer is not a worthy supplication. If it's not coming from the heart, then you're missing something. So that's on the table, that idea, and yet at the same time the rabbis are promulgating a very fixed text to be recited at specific times of the day with a specific script. So if you just turn over, we'll see a text from Maimonides that elaborates on this phenomenon a little bit more. So when the people of Israel went into exile in the days of the wicked Nebuchadnezzar, that's in 586 BCE, the destruction of the first temple, they mingled with the Persians, Greeks, and other nations. In those foreign countries, children were born to them whose language was confused. Everyone's speech was a mixture of many tongues. No one was able, when he spoke, to express his thoughts adequately in any one language. Consequently, when any one of them prayed in Hebrew, he was unable adequately to express his needs or recount the praises of God without mixing Hebrew with other languages. When Ezra and his council realized this condition, they ordained the 18 benedictions, Shemona Esrei, in their present order. The object aimed at was that these prayers should be in an orderly form in everyone's mouth, that all should learn them, and thus the prayer of those who were not expert in speech would be as perfect as that of those who had command of a pure Hebrew style. For the same reason, they arranged in a fixed form all of the blessings and prayers for all Jews, so that the substance of every blessing should be familiar and current in the mouth of one who is not expert in speech. So we might be under the false impression sometimes that our great-grandparents, the people in the old country, whether it was Europe or anywhere else, that they were pious Jews and they knew the whole Talmud and they knew Hebrew and they knew everything there was to know about Judaism, but that wasn't the case. That sort of fiddler on the roof theory of Jewish life is just not true. People in the old country had a wide variety of knowledge, and we see here 1,000 years ago with the Rambam, he probably witnessed the same thing in his day, and he's reflecting back based on rabbinic literature going way back to 500 BCE, that people in those days also did not necessarily know Hebrew. So it was necessary in those days to create a script, a Hebrew script that people could follow to address their needs to God.
Could it also have been that because they were bombarded with all these languages and cultures, that the fear was that the Jews would lose their reverence and their way of Jewish reverence?
Absolutely.
So the benedictions were learned by rote, because if you practice something enough, it becomes real.
Right, right. And so again, we have that tension of the keva and kavanah. The rabbis and the precursors to the rabbis wanted to have a fixed text so that Jewishness would stay with people, even in a time and a place where people didn't necessarily have fluency in Hebrew. They didn't necessarily know all there was to know about being Jewish, but they wanted them to have the basics, and they wanted them to be able to approach God much as the patriarchs did, but to have a structure so that they would know how to do it, because without this structure, there was fear that this art form of engaging with the divine would be lost. And so there was great concern. So I think you're right on. So we see here, I mean, Maimonides is not a historical text. He's quoting, or he's synthesizing rabbinic texts, and often he adds his own spin on it. But we see a rabbinic perspective on the development of the Amidah, why it was important to establish a fixed prayer. So we have the idea that it should be according to the number of avot, that each time we say the Amidah, we recall a prayer that one of the avot said. Another view is that no, the prayers are according to the sacrifices, and Maimonides adds this idea that suggesting perhaps that the ideal is for every person to just commune with God, just as the avot did, but we were in danger of losing that art form, and so we needed this script to create that. So through the keva, we would come to the kavanah, and so Maimonides says that. So just to review this section, this debate with Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehoshua on the previous page, what's at stake is this tension between keva and kavanah. Those who believe that the Amidah derives from the avot, that school of thought is saying that the prayer that we say, it should be a prayer of the heart. It should be spontaneous prayer, perhaps at each time of the day, just as the avot did, but it should really be an outpouring. And then the other side is no, it should correspond to the prescribed sacrificial worship that the Torah describes. I mean, it didn't come from nowhere. The Torah talks about the sacrifices, the order of the sacrifices, and there's a fixed liturgy. We don't have sacrifice. Prayer is the substitute for sacrifice. So the upshot is all of these viewpoints are true, and we synthesize both ideas in our tradition.
The question I have, in order to go from keva to kavanah, is that one idea? For example, when the Soviet Jews and the Ethiopians went to Israel and the Soviet Jews came here, they printed books with their language that they knew, as well as the Hebrew alongside. So that the idea that somehow they, as they started to learn the Hebrew, if they had to go back to the language they grew up with, the combination of Keva and Kevanah could be developed, just like we have it in Hebrew and English here?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the exact examples, but you go around the world,
Yeah.
I mean, in Paris, the prayer books are in Hebrew and